London, 1828. The capital of the British Empire. 1.5 million people, but policed by just 450 constables and 4,500 night watchmen. Crime is out of control. Pickpockets, street robberies, violence. The watchmen are old, inefficient, corrupt. Different organizations, no coordination, no system. Something has to change. Enter Robert Peel. Born February 5, 1788 in Bury, Lancashire, from a wealthy textile manufacturing family, educated at Oxford, a rising star in the Tory party. In 1822, he becomes Home Secretary. He's just 34 years old, and he has a radical idea. A professional police force, not soldiers, not watchmen, professional civilian police officers, paid, trained, accountable. In 1828, a parliamentary committee investigates London's policing. They recommend creating a unified force. Peel drafts legislation, the Metropolitan Police Act of 1829. It passes Parliament. The law establishes a full-time professional police force for London, based at Scotland Yard, controlled by the Home Secretary. 17 divisions, each with 4 inspectors and 144 constables. September 29, 1829, the first day. 1,000 officers take to London streets. They wear blue tailcoats, top hats. They look like ordinary citizens. Deliberately, Peel wants them distinct from red-coated soldiers. They're armed with wooden truncheons and whistles. That's it. No guns, no weapons. The philosophy is simple. Police by consent, not by force. People call them Bobbies after Robert, or Peelers after his surname. But they're not popular, not at first. A handbill from 1830 calls them raw lobsters and blue devils. The comparison is deliberate. Lobsters are blue when raw, but turn red when heated, like soldiers. People fear the police will become military. Some see them as government spies, tools of oppression, an attack on freedom. But Peel persists, and slowly the police prove their worth. Crime falls. Order improves. By 1857, every city in Britain is required to form its own police force. The original requirements were strict. Male, under 35 years old, fit and healthy, at least 5 feet 7 inches tall. That height requirement? It mattered, for decades. By the 19th century, some forces required 5 feet 10 inches. Nottingham City Police? 6 feet minimum. The thinking was simple. A tall officer commands respect, intimidates criminals, projects authority. They were paid 21 shillings a week, about £1 and 5 pence, more than a laborer, but less than a skilled worker. And they had to buy their own uniforms. The rules were strict. They couldn't talk to sex workers, couldn't associate with criminals, couldn't visit pubs. They worked 7 days a week, walking their beat, up to 10 miles a day, in all weather, reporting to sergeants, maintaining order through presence. Their weapon? A wooden truncheon, a short club. It remained standard issue for over 160 years, from 1829 until the 1990s. Simple, effective, non-lethal. It embodied the philosophy: minimum force, maximum restraint. Firearms were rare. In 1884, after several police murders, the Home Office ordered nearly 1,000 revolvers from Webley & Son. These were issued to divisions, but only at the divisional officer's discretion, and only if the constable requested one for night duty. Most officers refused. The majority never used them. Why? British police culture. The public feared armed police, saw them as militaristic, un-British, so most Bobbies preferred their truncheons. By 1936, guns were required to be kept in locked cupboards at stations, not carried on patrol. By 1900, the British Bobby was established, a cultural icon, a symbol of order, of civility, of restraint. Other countries copied the model. Australia, New Zealand, Canada. The British Bobby became the template for modern policing worldwide. But the world was changing, and policing would have to change too. The First World War saw increased arming of virtually every police branch. The main aim? Discourage sabotage by infiltrated foreign agents. Prepare for possible invasion. Suddenly, Bobbies carried rifles. It was unprecedented, but necessary, or so they thought. Then, peace. After the war, virtually all rifles and significant numbers of pistols were withdrawn from service. Back to truncheons, back to normal. War came again in 1939. Rifles were issued in limited numbers for defense of key stations, mostly outdated Ross rifles, demonstrating how little importance the Home Office placed on armed police. Police also became air raid wardens, directing civilians to shelters, maintaining order during the Blitz, dealing with unexploded bombs. After 1945, same story. Rifles withdrawn, pistols withdrawn, back to minimal armament. The 1950s and 60s. The golden age of the British Bobby. The friendly face on the corner, helping old ladies cross the street, giving directions to tourists. In the 1950s and 60s, about 17% of London officers became authorized to carry firearms after several shootings of police. But even then, most didn't carry them regularly. The London Police's Specialised Firearms Unit dates back to 1966. Originally called D6, it became D11 in July 1967. It was small, specialist, for extreme situations only, sieges, armed criminals, terrorism. In 1975, directly after the Munich Olympics massacre, D11 was formally given an operational role in counter-terrorism and serious armed crime. This was new territory, British police adapting to new threats. The 1980s brought change. Many licenses for firearms were revoked following a series of shootings. The public remained skeptical of armed police, but violent crime was rising. Criminals increasingly had guns. The balance was shifting. The truncheon was still standard, but for how long? Armed response vehicles were deployed officially for the first time in London in 1991. This was revolutionary. Not armed officers walking beats, but armed officers in vehicles, ready to respond, mobile, fast. Early ARVs contained a secure safe with a Smith & Wesson Model 10 revolver for each officer. 2 Heckler & Koch MP5 carbines in the boot. After ARVs became established, the Model 10 revolvers were replaced by Glock 17 semi-automatic pistols. 9mm, more capacity, faster reload, modern, effective. Within the early 1990s, most forces adopted ARV systems, following London's example, each force maintaining its own armed capability, but still specialized, still separate from regular policing. September 11, 2001. Everything changes. Again. Following the attacks, new guidelines were developed for dealing with terrorist suspects. Codename Operation Kratos, based partly on advice from security forces of Israel and Sri Lanka. Countries with experience of suicide bombings. The guidelines were controversial. Shoot to kill, some called it. But police training emphasized removing the threat, not killing. July 22, 2005. Stockwell Tube Station. Jean-Charles de Menezes was shot dead by police who mistook him for a terrorist. He wasn't a terrorist. He was an innocent Brazilian electrician. Wrong place, wrong time, mistaken identity. The Metropolitan Police Service was fined £175,000 with $385,000 costs. The incident sparked national debate about armed police, about tactics, about accountability. In 2010, 5.56mm caliber carbines were widely introduced in case of an attack similar to the Mumbai attacks of 2008. The Heckler & Koch G36C semi-automatic, higher firepower for extreme scenarios. In summer 2010, the government significantly expanded and accelerated programs to improve police response to terrorist attacks. British policing was militarizing, reluctantly, but inevitably. 2012, the London Olympics. Police upskilled from specialist firearms officers to a new certification, Counter-Terrorist Specialist Firearms Officers, CTSFOs. Training included live rounds in close-quarters combat, fast roping from helicopters, conducted jointly with UK Special Forces. These aren't regular police, these are elite, the best-trained armed officers in British policing history. Since 2004, police forces issued tasers to authorized firearms officers, a less lethal option, between a truncheon and a gun. Body cameras, mandatory now. Every interaction recorded. Accountability, transparency. Height requirements? In May 1990, the Metropolitan Police dropped minimum height requirements. Other forces followed by September 1990. No longer 5 feet 10. Anyone can apply, regardless of height. As of March 2023, 6,651 officers were authorized to use firearms. 6,038 were operationally deployable, out of about 140,000 police officers nationwide. That's less than 5%. In the year ending March 2023, there were 18,395 firearms operations. But weapons were fired in only 10 incidents. 10 out of 18,000 operations. The vast majority of British police remain unarmed, by choice. Over 80% of officers say they don't want to see all police armed. Why? Because armed police changes the relationship with the public, creates distance, fear, reduces trust. Policing by consent. It's still the philosophy. Nearly 200 years after Robert Peel. From wooden truncheons to Glock pistols. From top hats to tactical helmets. From walking beats to armed response vehicles. British policing has transformed, but the core remains. Civilian police, accountable to the public, using minimum necessary force. Between 1900 and 2006, only 67 British police officers were killed by firearms outside Northern Ireland. Compare that to America, where hundreds of officers are shot annually. The British model works. Imperfect, but it works. Robert Peel created something remarkable, something that endures. The British Bobby, still patrolling streets, still unarmed mostly, still policing by consent, 200 years and counting.